Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Holy Girl Podcast. I am your host, Samantha Tillman, and as always, I love you guys so much. I love this channel so much. This channel is my baby. I'm so happy to be back, and let's talk about consistency this week. 2 episodes in 1 week is just... y'all, I'm trying, okay? Consistency has never been in my vocabulary, but this week it is. So we are doing an episode on comparison and what the Bible has to say about comparison. And we're talking about comparison versus reality. A lot of us compare ourselves to celebrities. We compare ourselves to our family members, to our friends. We compare ourselves to people we see on social media. We compare ourselves in everyday work, our co-workers, our teammates, our classmates. We're always feeling like we need to compare ourselves. And so today I wanted to talk to you guys about comparing yourself to others versus the reality of what you're really comparing yourself to. So if you guys are new here, hi everyone, my name is Samantha Tillman. This is the Holy Girl Podcast. This podcast came about because God was like, I want you to speak to those who feel lost, who feel hurt, broken, just spiritually and mentally exhausted. I want you to speak to those who are curious, who are learning, who are walking in faith, and just believers of our God and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And this season of the Holy Girl Podcast is called Shine with Purpose, Embrace Your True Identity, and Discover Who You Are in Christ. What does that mean? That means that we are breaking down the fundamentals of who God is and who He says we are so we can find out what it really means to have our identity found in solely God alone. So in this world, we are defined by our sexuality. We are defined by our gender or non-gender. We're defined by what people say that we are, what astrology says that we are, what the new moon and everything that's in between in this world. We are defined by so much, and all of that is not what God says in His Word. And so we are taking it back to the fundamentals of who God and Jesus are. And so I felt like if we're going to be talking about identity, we have to talk about comparison. I feel like they go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about comparison and the reality of what we compare ourselves to. We're going to be looking at Luke 15, verses 11 through 32. It's the Prodigal Son. And if you guys have ever read the Prodigal Son, then you guys know the story of he went out, he was foolish, he came back, and his dad was here with open arms. It is a parable for basically Jesus just saying that if you sin and fall short, I'll still be here. I'll still be here, arms wide open, because I love you and because I'm a forgiving God. That's kind of what the story of the parable of the prodigal son is. However, we're not taking that perspective today like we did 2 episodes ago. I switched the perspective around and we're going to look at the older brother. And you're probably like, who's the older brother? The older brother has an importance in the story as well. And I've never heard it from this perspective before. So I'm really excited to share with you what I've been studying. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. Before I start the intro, I just wanted to talk about the quote of the day, which is, comparison will either make you feel inferior or superior. Neither of them honors God. And that is by Craig Groeschel. So let's get into it. Let's start out this intro. So we are going to be talking about comparison versus reality. So I wanted to talk about the definition of what comparison actually is. Comparison is evaluating your circumstances and your achievements in relations to other people. It is a measure of our worth, success, or progress based on someone else's life, their possessions, or their experiences. See, as women, so when I was writing this, I was thinking about, as women, we compare ourselves, and as women, we are always compared to other people. Our parents are always comparing us, our friends are always comparing us, the world compares us. And so I was thinking about it, and I was typing it up as women, and I was like, but I'm reading this from a version of a male's perspective. I was like, no, this is women and men. Everybody compares themselves to somebody else. So I changed it. As women and as men, we compare ourselves. We compare our physical appearance. We always say that people are body goals. We get plastic surgery and we show our plastic surgeon pictures of other people that we want to look like. We compare our career success, our job promotions, our income. We compare our job titles to other people. We compare our relationships. Are they happy in their marriage? Are they happy in their life, their milestones, material possessions? We compare houses, income, cars, clothing. We compare our social media presence. Who has more followers? Mirror that person. Do I have more likes on this picture, or do they have more likes on their picture? We talk about spiritual life, faith journeys. Are people's faith journeys closer? Do we perceive that these people have more closeness to God? Do we compare our church involvement with somebody else's church involvement? Or fitness and health? Are we comparing our exercise routines, our diet, our weight loss journeys? Are we comparing that to other people? So there's just a full spectrum, and that's just to name the ones that could come to mind. But there's a full spectrum on how we compare ourselves to other people. Okay, so the prodigal son, it starts in verses 11 to 32 of Luke chapter 15. Okay, so it says, in verse 11, he also said, a man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate I have coming to me. So he distributed the assets to them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered together all he had and traveled to a distant country where he squandered his estate in foolish living. After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he had nothing. Then he went to work for one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. He longed to eat his fill from the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one would give him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food, and here I am dying of hunger. I'll get up, go to my father, and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired workers. So he got up and he went to his father. But while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father told his servants, Quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then bring the fattened calf and slaughter it. And let's celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field. As he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he summoned one of the servants, questioning what these things meant. Your brother is here, he told him, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and didn't want to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him. But he replied to his father, Look, I have been slaving many years for you, and I have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a goat so that I can celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him? Son, he said to him, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So I'm not sure about you guys, but when I'm reading this, in my head, I'm like, I don't really see much wrong with what the older brother said. Like, the older brother was slaving away, but it does look, from his perspective, that you're celebrating foolishness, that you're celebrating a son who went out and was foolish, but you're not celebrating me who's been working and slaving my life away for you for years. So we might say things just like the older brother. So think about it from your perspective. It's not fair that I did all the work and never get any recognition. Why should I celebrate them when I've been the one doing all the work? I've done so much and no one appreciates me. How come they get all the opportunities and I get nothing, even though I've been consistent? We say things like that in our career. We say things like that to our own siblings. Today, we're going to talk about 3 points of how we can stop comparing ourselves to others. So getting into point number 1, we're all about points today. Point number 1, to stop comparing ourselves to others, we have to address the emotions behind comparison. I had to take a pause for myself because I think sometimes when we compare ourselves to people, it's always about them. It's always about what they're doing. It's about how they're getting recognition. It's about how they're getting the fame and the fortunes and the love that we want, right? We look at that and we point our finger at them, but we never address ourselves. We never address our own emotions in the situation, and that is the most important. So we're going to look from the older brother's perspective of what comparison looks like. Going back to Luke 15, verses 27 to 28, it says, "Your brother is here. He," which is the servant, "told him, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him," your younger brother, "back safe and sound." Then he became angry. And didn't want to go in, so his father came out and pleaded with him. So the older brother's response is not far off from how we would respond when we compare ourselves to others. We feel inadequate. We believe that our efforts are not good enough, that we're invisible. We feel unappreciated, that someone else's success could take away from ours. We feel jealousy, anger, enviness, even bitterness. We resent others because of their achievements and because of the attention that they are receiving. We feel discontentment over time, which causes us to lack gratitude in our life for the things that we already have. And that also causes us to have a distorted view of ourselves because we believe that life is unfair, or we even take it to the most dramatic, that God doesn't love us, that God doesn't see us, that God doesn't hear us, that God is not around us, that He doesn't notice us. And that's all lies. So when I was reading this back, I was really thinking about the fact that everything started off because he was angry, right? And he didn't address his emotions of being angry due to him comparing himself to his brother's celebration at that moment. And so when I was thinking about anger, I was like, I had just finished, if you guys saw my last video or the video before that, I was talking about how I've been studying Galatians. I finished that, but I was studying Galatians, and in Galatians, it talks about in chapter 5, the fruits of the Spirit, and it also talks about the acts of the flesh. And anger is in the acts of the flesh, anger, jealousy. And so what I was noticing is that he didn't lead with the fruit of the Spirit. He was leading with the acts of the flesh. In Galatians 5:22, verses 23, it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." So the thing is that the older brother never saw the reality of what was going on. The older brother heard dancing and singing and clapping and celebration and was like, "Servant, what's going on?" and was told what happened. He doesn't know about the interaction between the younger son and the father. All he knows is that, okay, my brother's back and you're celebrating him. And so the reality is that when we look at the younger brother's perspective in Luke 15, verses 21, it says, "The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.'" See, the younger brother was in shame. He felt humiliated, probably. He felt humility also and repentance. He was starving, if we remember that he wanted to eat what the pigs had. He was starving. He was lonely. He was broken. Even the father said, "Put some shoes on his feet." He probably came back barefoot. His clothes were probably torn or old or, dirtied up. His life wasn't what it seemed. From the brother's perspective of only what he hears from his servant, all he can do is go off of his own emotion. He doesn't address it. He just goes off of his emotion of anger. See, about the celebration, it wasn't about condoning his foolishness. No, it was about him returning and restoration. That's what the celebration was about. However, due to the other brother's reaction, all he's doing is ruining his relationship with his younger brother, which his younger brother probably came back so desperately wanting was relationships, real relationships again. How to stop comparing ourselves to others in point 1 is to address the emotions behind your comparison. Acknowledge and confront your emotions. Know that every emotion that you feel is not always factual and that you don't have to sit in your emotions. So there's a couple Bible verses that I wanted to put in here. So in Ephesians 4 verses 26, it says, "In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry." In Ephesians 4 verses 32, it says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ God forgave you." In Proverbs 4 verses 23, it says, "Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the spring of life." So we want to address the emotions behind comparison, but what we also want to do is shift our emotions. We need to shift our comparison to compassion. Instead of going down a spiral of negativity, whether you're thinking negatively about that person who had that celebration, or if we're thinking negatively about ourselves, we need to practice in that moment empathy, practice love, practice kindness, living in the fruits of the Spirit. What does that look like every day? To be walking out of love, out of kindness, out of forbearance, out of self-control, out of gentleness, out of faithfulness. What does that look like? And when we get into our emotions, regardless of what it is, we can address that right then and there. I'm angry, but this is not the fruit of the Spirit, so I will not walk in my anger. I'm upset right now, but that's not the fruit of the Spirit, so I will not walk in my upsetness right now. I'm feeling bitter. I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling resentful right now. That's not the fruit of the Spirit. I'm not going to walk in that. I'm going to address it head on so that I can move forward with the fruit of the Spirit at mind, with the things that God tells me to do, with having clarity in my mind. I will walk in that. I won't walk in the emotions that I'm feeling right off the bat. I can sit here and take a moment to myself, address why I'm feeling that way, and then move forward out of the fruits of the Spirit. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So number 2, we're ready to point to how can I stop comparing myself to others, is to recognize that everyone has their own struggles in life. Everyone's going through something. So when we look back at the older brother's perspective, we're going to look in Luke 15 verses 29. It says, "But he replied to his father, 'Look, I have been slaving many years for you, and I have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a goat so that I can celebrate with my friends.'" See, when we're comparing ourselves to others, we're distorting the truth. We feel like we're lacking. We feel like we don't have anything, that this person has this new car, so I need a new car because my car's not good enough. In all actuality, he doesn't know the brother's full story. He doesn't know what his brother was going through. All he sees is what he didn't receive, which is appreciation, which is attention, which is a celebration, even the goat. He overlooks his brother's sufferings, right? Which his sufferings are the reason why he came back. He didn't come back because he's like, all right, I spent all my money, now I'm back for more. No, he came back because he was struggling. And so when we look at the reality of it from the younger brother's perspective, we're looking in Luke 15 verses 18 to 19. It says, "I'll get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired workers.'" So the reality, which is what the older brother didn't see, is that as quickly as the money came is as quickly as it left. He wasn't happy all the time. He was starving. He was lonely. He didn't have his friends around. He didn't have his family around. He felt regret. He felt shame. That's why he came back. It wasn't because he was happy and he lived out his life and now he's back for a summer. No, he had regret. He had loneliness, shame. He was coming back with the expectation that his family was disowning him. He didn't even know if he would be able to get back in his dad's good graces as a hired worker. So to stop comparing yourself to others, we already talked about point 1, which is addressing the emotions of the comparison. But number 2, we were talking about recognizing everyone has their own struggles. So comparing yourself to others blinds us to the full reality of other people's journeys. We don't need to assume that we know everybody's full story. We can see on social media, oh, they have this great relationship because they always post pictures. We don't know what's happening behind closed doors. They could be on the verge of divorce. They could be on the verge of breaking up. We could see them having their child, but we don't know if that person's ever had a miscarriage. When you think about yourself, right? Think about things that you've never told your family. Think about things that you've never told your friends. Think about things you would never put on social media or say out in public about your life. Things that you take with you because they just hurt so hard that you don't want to bring it up again. Imagine that. Now imagine that that's also somebody else's life that you're comparing yourself to, right? Not everybody's going to share everything socially. Not everybody in your family is going to share what they're going through. Not every one of your friends is going to tell you every last thing that they feel or that they've been through, right? So know that when you're comparing yourself to others. Here's 2 examples. So I went on Lemon8, and there's this girl that I follow on Lemon8. I was watching one of her videos, and she looked really upset. And she made a video saying that people were looking at her body because she's very, very, very slim. And they were like, oh, like, I want to have a body just like you. Like, I want to look just like you. What's your workout routine? What do you eat in a day? All of this, right? And she came on there to say that I have a health condition, like a really bad health condition, and you guys want to look like me. I don't even want to look like this. I have a health condition, which is why I'm so slim. I would love to look like you guys. I would love to have more meat on my bones, or whatever she said, right? But people are comparing themselves to her body. I want her body. This is the goal I want. And she's like, I have a health condition. Not a good one. I've been in and out of the hospital. You guys don't know that. I wasn't going to share that to you, but I just see how many people, how many younger women, whatever, are just so infatuated with my body, and I need to tell you guys the truth. There's another example of a YouTuber that I watch, and people are like, I want your career. What's your workout routine? What are you eating in a day? Why does your body look so good? You have the perfect figure. And in one of her episodes, I mean, I've watched like all her episodes, but in one of her episodes, she's like, I had surgery. Like, yes, my body looks like this, and I do still work out to maintain it, but I didn't get this body on my own. Like, this body was surgically done because this is how I wanted my body. So I can't tell you guys how to actually get this figure because I didn't even have this figure. And so it kind of just switches your perspective on, you really don't know. Like, you see people out there who are like, they have the best body, they have the best hair, they have the best life, they have the best kids, they have the best spouse, they have the best whatever it is, they have the best home, the best car. You don't know what these people are going through, right? They could be on the verge of foreclosure. That car could have been repossessed at one point. They probably, whatever the situation is, right? We don't know. And so when we compare ourselves to other people, know that they're still human beings, right? Know that they're still having their own struggles. When you look at other people's lives, know that that's not a true reflection of their lives. So in Luke 15 verses 31, it says, Son, he said to him, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. Don't lose sight of your blessings in life, comparing yourself to others. See, the older brother had food. The older brother had shelter. He had his friends around. He said, why aren't you throwing a celebration for me so I can party it up with my friends? He has friends. He has family around. He has shelter. He has food. He has everything that he needs, right? The son didn't anymore because the son stepped out, and who cares what the son's actions were, to be honest. We compare ourselves to people that we don't even know the full storyline. We don't even know what they're going through. And when we compare ourselves and what we see that we need, we feel like we're lacking. But don't do that to yourself, and don't do that to God. God is blessing you with so much, with your career, with your job, with your car, with your house, with your friends, with your family, everything. And I feel like when we compare ourselves, it's like we're putting God down. It's like we're saying to God that what you've given me, great, whatever, it's not what she has, it's not what he has, and that's what I want. And could you imagine the creator of you, the creator of this universe, giving you everything, giving, like, you know what I mean? And you're just like, thanks, but that's not good enough because I want this other person's life. So we're now looking at point number 3, which is to stop comparing ourselves to others. We have to understand the difference between perspective and reality. So when we look at the older brother's perspective and how he's comparing himself to his younger brother, we have to look at Luke 15 verses 30. It says, "But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him." See, the older brother's perspective is just centered on the celebration, right? He's centered on the feast. He's centered on the attention, on the robe, on everything of what the younger brother is receiving. See, one of the things that I kept reading over because I was noticing something that God was trying to tell me is that he brought up his sins. He brought up his mistakes. See, some of us feel like because somebody did something once that they don't deserve anything good in life. We need to know the difference, that our perspective is not reality. Our perspective is just our perspective. It's just our opinion, right? Just like people have perspectives and opinions of you, and sometimes you hear them and you're like, what? That's not true. That's not me. That's not who I am. Absolutely not. No. That's not reality. That's their perspective and that's their opinion. So same with yours. You need to know the difference between your perspective and their reality. And so when we look at the fact that he brought up his brother's sins, oh, he devoured your assets with prostitutes. He spent everything he had. Why would you even celebrate that? So I did an episode last episode, which was on Tuesday. The question was, which was the last question of the entire episode, is what does the world need more of? And I said love. I felt like if everybody acted and led out of love, the world would be a lot different. Because if they love Christ and they know how much Christ loves them, then they act different. When you're walking in the fruits of the Spirit, it's different than walking in the acts of flesh. And so when we talk about love is patient, love is kind, when you go to 1 Corinthians 13 verses 5, it says, "It," which is love, "does not dishonor others. It does not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs." See, what the brother is doing is the opposite of love. He's bringing up his wrongs. He's angry. It's becoming about him. And that I did this for you, Father, and my brother did this, and you're celebrating that when I've been here slaving for years. It's self-seeking. It's dishonoring the brother. He's not walking out of love. He's not walking in the fruits of the Spirit. Out of the younger brother's reality, we look at Luke 15 verses 14 and 16. I skipped 15, but it says, "After he had spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he had nothing. He longed to eat his fill from the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one would give him anything." So the reality is far different than what the older brother perceived, right? Oh, he spent his money on prostitutes, but you don't know that once he spent his money on prostitutes, he had nothing. Famine, he was starving. Nobody would give him anything. All those people he was probably partying it up with are gone. He's lonely. He's by himself. And so I remember having a friendship with this person. I just felt like she had such a better faith walk than I did. But this person didn't cuss. This person didn't drink. This person brought up God in every conversation, just so confidently. I just longed to have a relationship with God like I perceived that she had. It wasn't out of jealousy or envy. It was out of like inspiration of like, wow, I really want to be more like that. How do I work on my relationship with God? How do I do this better? How do I do that better? That was my perspective, right? In the reality of it, one day she said to me that she thought that I had such a stronger relationship with God than she did. She was inspired by me. She was like, I just believe that your relationship is stronger. The way the way you talk about God is just so confident. I'm like, no, girl, the way you talk about God is confidence. I'm like, like you stand on business. Public speaking, I said this in multiple videos, public speaking is not my thing. And so I'm like admiring her, but in all actuality, she's admiring me. And that was one of those things of like, I was comparing myself to her because I'm like, she's doing this right, she's doing this right, she's doing this right, this is great. But in reality, she was looking at me like, how can I be more like her? Because she's doing this right, and she's doing this right, and she's doing this right. So just know that perspective and reality are two different things, and you need to know the difference of them. So in conclusion, there is a difference between comparison and reality. To stop comparing yourself to others, you need to address the emotions behind comparison. Are those emotions out of your flesh, or are those emotions out of the fruit of the Spirit? When someone has what you don't have, how do you react to that? Will that lead you to compassion and joy, or will that lead you to anger, resentment, bitterness? To stop comparing yourself to others, you need to recognize that everyone has their own struggles. Don't assume that you know someone's full story, even if you're close to them, even if it's your family, even if it's your friends, even if it's your relationship, your partner, whoever. Don't assume that you know somebody's full story just because you perceive it this way. And don't lose sight of your own blessings. God is giving you what you need at all times during the time that you need it. A car, your house, your shelter, your food, your family, your friends, whatever it is. God is moving you at your own pace that you need to be moved at. You don't need to compare yourself to somebody else because you don't know their life. And there's a quote that just came to mind that said, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. Don't do that to yourself, because you can sit here all day and be so ungrateful for the things that God is giving you in your life because you're looking at somebody's middle. God is like, I love you just like I love that other person. I'm blessing you just like I'm blessing that other person. I'm with you just like I'm with that other person. But stop comparing yourself. You guys are two different things. Just like they say that the sun and the moon don't compare themselves. They both have different purposes for different things. But they're still beautiful. Just like a rose and a daisy are both beautiful. They have two different looks to them. They have two different colors to them. But that doesn't mean that they're not both valuable. And so 3, to stop comparing yourself to others, you need to understand the difference between perspective and reality. Act out of love. Go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4-8 and read love. Are you patient? Are you kind? Are you not self-seeking? Go through those and say, am I or am I not? And so that is the end of this episode. I truly have been wanting to do this episode for a while because I was a person who compared myself to other people. Like, I felt like that was something that the Holy Spirit was trying to get out of me. It was like, hey, you keep comparing yourself to people, and that's not what I need you to do. There's a Bible verse that I don't have right now that says to worry about yourself. You don't need to worry about somebody else. You don't need to compare yourself to other people. Worry about yourself and go back to what God says about you. How can you use that in your day? How can you use that to better yourself? Work on yourself. So in conclusion, stop comparing yourself to other people. Work on yourself. Be who you are. I remember I was sitting down the other day, and I'll end with this. I was sitting down the other day with my little baby cousin, and she is adorable. I watch her and I'm like, this is a younger me. Like, this girl is so glitz, so glamour, so whatever. I was just like, girl, who are you? Like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, when you're just like, oh, like, you're that girl. Like, who are you? And she's like, I'm you. I'm you. And I was like, no, you're not me. I was like, you're you, and you'll be better than me. I was like, be you. You don't need to be me, right? You don't need to dress how I dress. You don't need to sound how I sound. You don't need to act like me. And that takes you back to that kid perspective of like, we look at people and we admire them and we just want to be just like them. And I get that, but be you, right? Be your authentic self. Take it back to who God says you are. Your identity is found in God, right? Let God tell you who you are. Let studying the word and really knowing what God says about you make you move into who you are. Just be your authentic self and know what God says about you through his word. Watch some of the other episodes of the podcast so you guys can know what God says about you, because we always take it back to the word. So that's all that I have for this episode 7 of season 2 of the Holy Girl Podcast, which is comparison versus reality, what the Bible says about comparison. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helps a lot, and I will see you guys in my next episode. Bye everyone.